We are live. Okay. This is a video on why I think that somebody should buy Beyond Meat stock. Because obviously I feel good about it and I'm biased. But it's just going to be a big, huge rant of a bunch of things. Why I think so. No editing or anything like that. So the biggest reason I would say, well, there's a bunch, but I truly believe it's the future. Like you look at, I look at like the milk aisle when I was a kid, like growing up mainly in the '90s. Um, the milk aisle was just gallon jugs of milk, like as far as the eye could see, like all the way down this aisle that I don't even know. I was a kid, so it probably looked bigger, but I would say like 30 feet long, and then just stacked, who knows, maybe like 8 gallon jugs, just tons and tons and tons of gallons of milk. Um, there was like the Got Milk campaign, everybody was drinking milk, like it was huge. And I would say probably about 15 years ago, like around '04, '05, um, I started to notice, at least in the Midwest, that there was starting to show up like more plant-based milks, almond milk, oat milk, soy, whatever. But nowadays, like you go to the milk aisle doesn't look anything like it used to. Like, I don't know where it is, but maybe I would say 50-50. I don't know, maybe even more towards the non-dairy milks. I don't know, but it's grossly different. So there was a change there, and that market completely changed. I think that's going to happen also with meat. I don't think that meat is going to disappear. There's going to be people that still eat meat. It's going to be just like the milk aisle, I think. But I think a lot of people are going to be eating meat alternatives. A lot of people will think or say, how do you know which one's going to be the winner? And I don't know that there's necessarily going to be a winner. I think there's going to be a bunch of different winners. I don't think any of that is new news. Um, there's going to be a lot of plant-based alternatives, but then there's also going to be lab-grown meat too, regular meat. Like, there's going to be a lot of competition. So right now it's basically like Beyond Meat and Impossible. Um, Other than that, you do see big players like Tyson, Nestle, Kellogg. They're all creating these brands that give this perception of like, this healthy food or whatnot, but you wouldn't necessarily know that it is Tyson or Nestle or Kellogg or whoever. But those are popping up in grocery stores as well. So there's huge pockets for these competitors, right? They've got tons of money. So people are always going to say, "Oh, well, couldn't they just blast away Beyond Meat or Impossible and all this stuff?" I still don't believe that they will. I think the brand is much stronger in Beyond and Impossible. Um, so yeah, I think I think there's going to be a lot of competition, but I do think that Beyond is really strong. If you look around, Beyond is quite literally taking on pretty much any area that food is available. So it's not only that they're doing the burgers, but they're doing a bunch of other things, right? So they have the breakfast sausage, like patties and links. Um, they have meatballs. They have beef. They have beef crumbles. They're working on bacon and I think eventually steak. So one day those will come out. But the way I look at it is you can put yourself on pretty much any street in America that has some amount of population, and you can look around and you can find where Beyond Meat is, or even where they are going. So, like Dunkin' Donuts has a really good breakfast sandwich with Beyond Meat, like a sausage, like a pork alternative. It's really good. There's a zillion Dunkin' Donuts in the U.S. Like I've driven to a lot of places in the U.S. and I never really realized how many Dunkin' Donuts there are. They're in gas stations like all over the place. So you could be at pretty much any street and okay, is there a Dunkin' around? Decent chance. It may not seem like it, but there's actually a pretty decent chance that there's a Dunkin'. Um, they're in Hardee's and Carl's Jr. Depending on what area you're in, those may not be that popular. They're in Costco, Sam's Club, BJ Wholesale. Those are all pretty big. They just tripled their distribution to Walmart from like 800 stores to 2,400. I don't know the exact number. I think there's maybe about 5,000 Walmarts in the States. I could be wrong on that, but there's a little more room for growth. But just the fact that they're showing up in Walmart as well, right? Those wholesale stores. They're in a ton of restaurants, like a lot of smaller restaurants, but COVID has affected that quite a bit. So all that's down, but yeah, they're in a ton of restaurants. Odds are there's maybe a Denny's around. They're in every single Denny's in the States. They just announced that they're in, I think, like 7,000 CVS stores. Like, just the thought that meat is available or a meat alternative is available at a CVS. There's CVS all over this country. Like, again, just looking around, odds are you're probably going to see one of these places. They're also connected with Yum Brands, which is KFC, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell. And that's huge, especially in Asia. So they're starting to come through. They just released a sausage pizza at Pizza Hut. I think they've had one in Puerto Rico for a little bit and maybe one other location. The KFC nuggets they introduced in Atlanta, those sold out, like went super well in a day. And then I think they did it like in the Carolinas, Tennessee kind of area, and then Southern California. They've had the nuggets. I've seen like a couple reviews online. People seem to really like them, but it just kind of shows that that's all growing. So, okay, there's 3 other really large chains. As far as Subway, I'm trying to remember exactly where they're at in Subway. I don't know if they're in the States. I thought it was maybe Canada, but they were doing meatballs at Subway. So it's already a ton of stores. So the ways I look at it is places that you could eat are you're either going to cook yourself, which they're growing huge. The amount that people are repeat buying, how often they buy, how much they buy, that's all growing. I notice the grocery stores that I go to over the last year and a half, the amount of Beyond Meat products that is available is way, way more. Like before I used to go and there'd be like maybe 4 packages of the patties. The other day I went and there's probably, if I had to guess, maybe like 25 packages of the patties. They had a bunch of like the sausages for dinner. They had the breakfast sausages and the crumbles and a bunch of other stuff. So they're carrying a lot more products, but so you can basically cook it yourself. So they've got that. They've got all the restaurants, which are for the most part closed down because of COVID, but like a lot of these smaller restaurants, they're plugged into that. They're plugged into, universities and stadiums and all these other places to sell their burger or whatever other products they want to sell. And then the quick serve restaurants, is kind of like the third, and that's where a lot of people have been going to eat with COVID. Um, Not being able to go in and dine somewhere, the quick serves have been, I believe, coming back better than most restaurants. So they are showing up in those quick serves, but um, I think the biggest one that everybody's kind of been waiting on is the McDonald's one. And the stock just took a huge hit because they didn't think they were going to be in McDonald's. They were testing in McDonald's in Ontario um, almost a year ago. And that didn't go through. Nothing was solidified, but according to the CEO, there was no bad news with that. Everything was good. That there's a relationship there. Um, Yesterday, Beyond Meat had mentioned that they co-created with McDonald's the patty, and then not only is it just the patty, but they're also McDonald's is coming out with a McPlant line. So they're going to have chicken alternatives, they're going to have alternatives for their patties, and then also their breakfast sandwiches. So it sounds basically like a lineup through all of their different breakfast, lunch, and dinner kind of categories. So according to Ethan Brown, they're working with McDonald's on several things. The relationship is good, and furthermore, they just got factory space in Pennsylvania, I believe, Shanghai, and then somewhere in the EU. So they're building a bunch of capacity to produce more. Furthermore, on like the McDonald's thing, Burger King's over. They've got Impossible, but Impossible was kind of in the race, I think, with McDonald's. But quite a while back, there was news that they couldn't keep up with demand and they had dropped out. So seems for whatever reason, I don't know exactly why. I know that the strategies are different between the companies, but I think Beyond supposedly is able to scale more. Yeah, so going back to that situation of being on the street and looking around, there's literally a zillion places that you can find Beyond Meat products. Not only burgers, but just a ton of products, from McDonald's to eventually Taco Bell, KFC, Pizza Hut, Subway, Hardee's, Carl's Jr., TGI Fridays, pretty much like every grocery store, every wholesale kind of Costco kind of store. They're literally like everywhere. I walked into the market down the street, which is kind of like a middle market. It's not big, massive like a Walmart, or I wouldn't even say it's quite as big as like a Kroger or Ralph's, Publix kind of thing, but they have way more products. But and I went back and I looked at the milk aisle, and the milk aisle is easily, I would say, 50-50 at that store. Then I looked at the meat aisle, meat area, there's tons of actual meat for sale, and the plant-based alternatives is starting to grow, but it's much smaller. Worldwide, I think it's a 1.4 right now. I think they're saying in 2022 it'll be 1.5 trillion for meat around the world, which is a massive market that is expecting to see some growth in the plant-based. So there's room for other competitors. It's, I watch this stock like every single day, and there's always some sort of news like, oh yeah, the stock's getting downgraded because there's competition, and how are they going to compete? And it's the same story, and they will compete. They're already competing. They're gaining market share. And they're not going to be the one and only winner. But they'll definitely be there, basically betting with the trend that the milk aisle is going to change. As far as connections, I know that they're connected well with Yum Brands, so that's awesome. They have a guy on their board that was the previous, I believe, McDonald's CEO. So I would imagine that that is probably going to help them. Um, Other reasons why. So one main reason for me is I look at the warming up of the earth, and don't quote me on this. Go ahead, look up the research, but basically the numbers are roughly, and Beyond Meat had University of Michigan do a study on all the efficiencies and the global impact of the meat industry. So there's a lot of news out there. The meat industry is not that good for you. I'm not going to tell anybody not to eat meat. That's fine with them. I don't believe that we're not supposed to eat meat. But yeah, that's a whole other topic. My stance on it, I don't think that we really should be eating meat. You look at how our jaws function, they move side to side, not just straight up and down like a carnivore. You look at our digestive tract. Did we eat meat? Are our brains the size that they are because of meat and fire and all that? Yeah, sure. But I don't think that we need to. If you don't need to eat meat, okay, cool. But yeah, whatever. If you want to eat meat, fine. But I don't agree with the factory farming. I think it's a little messed up. Like if you watch videos of what those animals go through. I've driven around the country. I've seen a couple of the factory farms and like literally heard the screeching of animals going into these places. I've watched a bunch of videos. If you watch any of that kind of stuff, I think it would probably change your mind. I think there's a lot of people that probably couldn't take a knife to an animal's throat and do all that. I think as a consumer, you get it in a package and it's fully removed. But I guess that will kind of be my only rant on that part of the subject. But yeah, I don't think that we need meat. Science is showing us that more of a plant-based whole foods diet is actually better for us. I'm not going to say that Beyond Meat is healthy. I will say it's healthier, but I won't say it's healthy. You don't have the cholesterol, which when you look at like heart disease is absolutely huge with red meat. You don't have antibiotics and hormones that you're then eating. I kind of look at it like the food chain in the ocean. You have like these small little tiny fish and larger and larger and larger fish, and then boom, you've got a tuna that has a bunch of mercury in it because it's eaten everything in the food chain. I kind of see it as the same thing with humans with antibiotics and hormones and stuff. But anyway, back to the efficiencies. It's just way, way, way more efficient to grow plants and then take those plants and form meat out of them. So the way that Ethan Brown looks at it is it's basically a structure of fats, amino acids, carbs, and he takes them with plants using heating, cooling, and pressure, and forms a structure that is similar to meat, has a similar aroma, a similar taste, texture, kind of tear feel. It's not 100% there, but it's pretty close. I've had a lot of skeptics try it and like it, but anyway, the amount of energy that goes into feeding an animal, like the amount of resources to grow all the food for that animal to live, the amount of water, the amount of land, vets and hormones, antibiotics, all that stuff, trucking them, the slaughterhouse. It's a really complicated process with a lot of inefficiencies. The amount of food that that animal needs to eat, if you just look at that, is pretty big. Like, why not just take that food that you feed the animal and just change it to be food for us and then skip all the rest of the process? I forget the exact numbers. I'll throw some numbers. They're not going to be completely right. Go ahead, look it up. But University of Michigan, the water was absolutely huge. I thought the water was like a 99% savings. Like, water is going to be a big problem for us with everything that's happening in the world. Land, I think you saved like 93% or something like that on land. It was pretty high. You don't need anywhere near as much land. And then the greenhouse gases, I'm trying to remember exactly on that, but as far as the greenhouse gases, it's interesting to me because I used to work in the auto industry, and everybody, like, they look at cars and everybody's trying to squeeze that extra mile per gallon. And if you look at it, the methane that is coming from these animals is more destructive than what's coming from cars. And how many animals we have on this planet, I think it's somewhere around 70 billion. And it's more potent. So basically, the greenhouse gases from the meat industry is pretty much similar. I think, honestly, I think it's just a little bit more than the greenhouse gas impact when you're looking at climate change, when you sum up all of transportation. And I think that's like all cars, all trucks, buses, planes, boats, like everything. So yeah, it just seems like a gimme. So it's way, 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 way more efficient to just eat food from plants rather than grow this inefficient animal just to slaughter it. That isn't going to be as healthy for you. It's not going to be as good as for the environment, and overall the whole thing's inefficient. It doesn't make any sense. So that's part of the beauty too, is because it is so inefficient. As things scale up, these plant-based alternatives will come to price parity with the animal counterparts. So not only is there going to be price parity, but they're going to be able to make these plant-based alternatives for cheaper than the standard meat versions. So with that, they're going to be able to make more money. Everything's just going to be more efficient. To me, it makes a lot of sense. It's A, better for the animals, B, better for the planet, and C, better for the bottom line. I don't know how you can compete with it. So that's one thing with BYND, is I truly do see it as the future. I think people are going in and out, buy, sell, whatever, and it's been pretty hard. I've got a large amount of my savings in the stock, and people would say that it's risky, but it's something that I believe in, so I'm doing it. And overall, I do think that this is going to be a good long-term play. You look at the growth, you look at numbers for vegetarian and veganism, how it's growing. I don't think that it's necessarily the vegetarians and vegans, though, because honestly, they're targeting the carnivores. Like, majority of people are carnivores. So they're trying to make burgers that taste like meat. They're not trying to convert anybody or change their diet or anything. They're just trying to give them something that is essentially the same, if not taste potentially better, if not now, eventually, and costs less, and is healthier, and is good for the environment. So as long as the cost is the same, and you don't think that it tastes way off, like why would you not? So I think another reason why I do think that it's going to be a very big thing in another 5, 10 years. This whole thing for me is like a 5, 10 year play. I've been in it, um, I would say a little over a year, up to a year and a half. And then I've been buying throughout. And I told myself I'm not selling a single share um, until I'm at least 5 years, but maybe 10 years in. So 2024. And I know the CEO has mentioned that price parity will be happening within that time frame, which I see it anyway too. The competition's coming, the prices are getting lowered. Like it will be there, and with all of the inefficiencies of today's system, it's I don't think it's going to take us too long, especially if this McDonald's deal does happen. But even if the McDonald's deal doesn't happen and that all disappeared, it's still worth it. They're in too many other places, and it's just the future. It will be them. It will be Impossible. It will be many of other brands. It's going to be lab grown meat as well. Um, the market's just absolutely huge. So they have a first mover advantage, which is a good thing. Like Kim Kardashian on Instagram had on her story, she opens the freezer. Whether or not it was real, I don't know, but the freezer's full of Beyond Meat. Say what you will, but to me, that means something. They've got celebrities, they've got athletes, people endorsing it because they believe it's the right thing to do. Bill Gates was an early investor. Um, yeah, it's there's definitely like a cultural movement. Not only that, like you go to all these restaurants and everything's branded as Beyond. Like you go to Dunkin' and it's like whatever their sandwich is, it has Dunkin', it has Beyond's name in it. Their name's pretty much on everything. It might not happen with the McDonald's thing, but all these people, they all go to restaurants and they order a Beyond Burger or whatever it is with Beyond this or that. Well, then when they end up going to the grocery store and they see that same name and they attach it to the celebrities or this or that, whatever matters, it's got a really strong brand. So I think that's another way that people are going to end up buying. Back to like branding and the marketing and their connections. I forget the guy's name, but basically the guy that was in charge of the Got Milk campaign in the 90s that had like everyone with like a milk mustache, like the Backstreet Boys, they had Jonathan Taylor Thomas, they had Sarah Michelle Gellar, Britney Spears, like everybody had one of those stupid milk mustaches on. Like there's a massive, massive, massive thing. Well, they have that guy on their team, basically making a marketing campaign that's like educating people that the things that are in it are good for them and that it's good for the environment and all that. People say, yeah, it's processed, which I do agree. I'm not going to disagree on that. They don't say exactly how it's made. They say heating, cooling, and pressure. None of that really completely scares me. If you look at the labels, unless you're, extremely diligent, I don't think that the label really looks that bad. A lot of people assume they know what's in it. A lot of people say, oh, it's got soy or this or that. And like, man, if half the people that made these claims looked at the labels of the food that they actually eat and then they compared the label to this, they'd probably be quiet. There's not too much. Actually, I wish I had a label in front of me to read it, but it's basically like pea protein isolate. So it's basically peas. I think there's canola oil, some sunflower, potatoes, beets for coloring, Um, there's nothing really all that crazy in there. A lot of people think that there's soy. I think Impossible has soy. I'm not certain on that. And there's always a lot of confusion too between Impossible and Beyond. I'm curious to see how that's going to happen, how that'll change in years. I think some people say, yeah, Impossible tastes better. Honestly, I've never had. Well, actually, no. I have had the Impossible Whopper at Burger King, and I never really ate that many Whoppers, but I think it seemed pretty on with what a Whopper was, and from other people that also had it would agree. I don't really have anything bad to say as far as Impossible. The only thing that I don't like on it, I know some people, will have an argument why it's not a bad thing, but what is it? It's like called soy hemoglobin or something like that. They're basically like their heme iron that they use in their burger to kind of make it bleed and be more real. I think they use a genetically modified yeast for that. So I think that's another thing that Beyond has for them is they get to put the non-GMO logo stamp on their product. I'm trying to think of any other points. It was really meant to be a rant. The efficiencies I hit, global warming, the milk aisle, all the different forms, all the different places that you can get it. Oh, the CEO, Ethan Brown. So, like, I don't know. Take what you want out of it. Personally, I'm a fan of him. If you hear him speak, I think he's well spoken. I think that. So I have, I guess, maybe a vested interest eating primarily vegan. Him being vegan, I do think that he speaks to me. Not that he is searching for vegans, but basically the guy has a mission on like positively impacting the world, and he doesn't want anything to get into his way. I think there was a story, I'm sure the dude was relatively wealthy, probably not crazy, but I think maybe he had 2 homes, something like that. But basically, he's been working on this, I think, since like '09, and he's a Quaker. I don't really understand what Quakers are. Maybe they have like a life purpose or something like that. But his life purpose is basically to make like a plant-based McDonald's. Like he was working in the auto industry and fuel cells, and he was working on all these ways to like squeeze basically hydrocarbon emissions that are affecting the warming of the planet. And he kind of looked at it and said, whoa, there's this huge opportunity that is way bigger than squeezing all these small inefficiencies. There's a huge inefficiency in the animal. The guy grew up on a dairy farm somewhere like on the East Coast. So he has exposure to this life and this lifestyle, farmers and all that. But the dude's on a mission. He's on a mission to make the world a better place. He's not this, at least from what I see, he's not like this greedy corporate dude that's all out for the dollar. Like, and that's one thing about the stock that makes me feel good for how much of my savings I put into it. Honestly, if the stock went down and I lost money on it, I feel okay because I do think that it's the right thing to do. I don't think it's a wise way to invest, but I think it's the right thing to do. Before I put money into like oil stocks or I don't know, Amazon's kind of controversial, but my stomach just doesn't sit well investing with companies like that. this company I see as the future. I see it as a positive impact to the world, and it makes me feel a lot better. And quite frankly, I believe in the mission. I don't know if Jim Cramer has any positive clout, I guess maybe is the word, but Jim Cramer loves the dude, like loves it, supports it. You watch YouTube videos and Jim Cramer, he says that it's the future. Don't bet against them. He's very, very, very bullish long term with Beyond Meat as well. But yeah, basically the dude just seems very reasonable, and I like his mission. Go to the site, look at the mission, see if it chimes in with you. But yeah, what else was on this list? Health reasons. Oh yeah, so targeting non-vegans, I think that's super important. But this is a controversial one. A lot of people, a lot of people look at the market cap of the company and they look at the sales and they just say that it's grossly overvalued. There's all this competition coming. All that's true. They're not. I don't know I think they're selling maybe 600 million in revenue a year right now. I don't know. They're probably market caps around 10 billion. I think they were up to 12 the other month. Maybe they're down to 8. I don't know. The stock is all over the place. It's absolutely all over the place. It IPO'd at, I thought maybe like 45, jumped up to like 235 that July. Just like a couple months later, slammed down to the 70s, then to like 112-ish. COVID hit basically like $50. It's been climbing 70s, 120, 150. Then it had a big bull run up to 195. And then literally within like, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks, it's dropped all the way down to like almost like 110, 115, something like that. The stock is all over. But there's people that still buy at those high prices, and there's going to be people that are going to be buying at those prices later because it's going to be more of a value proposition as well as time goes on. I think this is definitely something to buy and hold for the long term. Look at their financials, look at their growth. Like, they're absolutely exploding. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So back to the valuation. I view it, and this may seem super bullish or whatever, but honestly, I view it very much like Tesla. Um, like I said, I was in the auto industry before. I know people are gonna, you know, Tesla has people that don't necessarily aren't on the bandwagon, and that's fine. But I was looking through a chat with a buddy from 2012, and he was all bummed because Apple stock was climbing to the moon, and he and we had missed the boat on buying the Apple stock. And looking at the chat, I was telling him about Tesla and how much I love Tesla, and how I think it was Car and Driver. Somebody said it was the best car that they had reviewed, and that I just look at like all of the simplicity, like the complexity of an internal combustion engine is insane. The amount of moving parts and the control in different ways, like the inefficiencies, what it does to the environment. And then you got to couple that thing to a transmission, the amount of clutches and bands and oil pathways and debris and temperature and control systems, and there's a large amount of parts there. It's super complex. It just seems so much easier and more elegant and simpler to have. I know that it's not quite this simple, but have a battery and a motor. That's like the Model X came out, and I think it had a similar CG as a Corvette because all the weight, even though it was an SUV, was down on the floor because of the battery. You look at the 0-60 times, like, I don't know. I saw the writing on the wall about 8 years ago with Tesla, and I never held and look at it. It's huge. I did the same thing with Amazon. I took my life savings at the time and put it all into Amazon at $186 a share. Earnings came out, I dropped 10%. I got spooked. I sold it all. I think Amazon now is around $3,300 a share. Hindsight's 2020, but I think Amazon, I saw all these people nearby in an apartment complex that I was in, and all these boxes just start showing up, and it was free shipping with a Prime account, and it just seemed like they were a disruptor. It seemed like Tesla was a disruptor, and I truly do feel that Beyond Meat is a disruptor. Do I think their stock's going to absolutely explode? I don't know. Maybe. I hope so. But I think over a couple of years, I think it's definitely going to see some really good growth, I believe. And back to the valuation thing. Like, I remember back in the day, any analyst that you would read, all the news articles, they'd all say, Amazon doesn't make profit. Why would you buy Amazon? And same with Tesla. They say, they're not selling many cars. Like, what? They have a market cap that's similar to GM. Like, look at GM and look at Tesla. And you know what? The thing traded anyway. Look at the market cap today. I don't know what it is, but I'll look it up real quick. It's got to be ridiculous. The market cap of Tesla today is $593 billion. $593 billion. You look at the market cap. Oh, GM's kind of up. They're at like $40. They've been at like 30 for like, I feel, the last 10 years. The market cap on them is 58. That's much smaller than Tesla. Now, if you look at how many sales, I'm sure GM sells more cars than Tesla. But again, I think it's a future thing. I don't think that the market cap, you can just completely look at it. You look at the market cap of Tyson, I think it's maybe 2-3 times what Beyond Meat is, but they sell way more than 2-3 times. So a lot of stuff is priced in, but it's just one of those things you won't necessarily know, and you just got to bet with. Yeah, I guess that's probably about it. The only thing that I would say is, if you haven't tried it, well, first of all, one thing I would say is right now the stock price is super good. I've had it for basically a year and a half. I meant to get in when the IPO happened. I didn't, but I've cost averaged and gotten a decent price. I'm at about where it is today. So I think this is a great opportunity for a lot of people to get in that, maybe, but also as like a long-term play. It really hasn't been this low for a bit. There's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of things coming through the pipeline. I think now is actually a really, really, really good time to buy. But and then I guess as far as the products, I haven't even really talked about the products. I haven't eaten meat in 3.5 years, so sometimes I feel that I might maybe not be the best to compare. Um, Honestly, I loved eating cheeseburgers and ribs, and my mouth's starting to water, salivate. Like some of that stuff was so good. I haven't missed it a ton, but now that this opportunity is here, like all these were the things that when I decided to not eat meat weren't quite as readily available, and a lot of like like these cheats, these alternatives weren't readily available. I think a lot of people that are going to veganism or vegetarianism will enjoy these, and I think people that really, frankly, have no interest, I think they'll like them as well. As far as the products, things that I would say that I like a lot, I would say that my favorite is definitely the breakfast sausages. The stuff with the spice is a little bit easier because you're tasting the spice more. If you think about eating actual meat, you're not really eating it because of the meat. You're mainly eating it because of the seasoning. And um, yeah, so the sausages I think are really good. I haven't had the links yet. The patties, the spicy ones, are delicious. Giving it to some people, they literally cannot tell the difference on those. I think those might be some of the closest. Then I would say I like the Dunkin' breakfast sausage. That one was really good. And surprisingly, I like the Denny's hamburger a lot. The Denny's hamburgers cheeseburger is really, really, really good. You would never really think of it from a Denny's, but um, so it's all in how you prepare it. You know, the Beyond Burger will taste different and better and worse at certain restaurants, and then versus when you cook it at home and how you cook it. If you put it on a charcoal grill or the stove or gas grill or whatever you do, you only have to season it. A lot of people say, "Oh, these things are high in sodium." Like they are a little elevated, but if you look at it, I don't think they're grossly different when you compare it to a standard burger that is seasoned. So that is one nice thing. They're already seasoned. You literally just like throw it on the grill, cook it, and eat it. Um, I think pretty much every other nutrition fact, I think they meet or beat real the nutrition facts of real meat. Um, I think they have more protein. I think less fat. Um, Similar on carbs. Yeah. Yep. So the burgers are good. I'm not a fan of the crumbles. I'm super excited for the bacon to come. That's gonna be delicious. And you're gonna want to own the stock when bacon comes because the world is over then. And what else? I really, 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 really want to try those KFC nuggets. I watched a couple YouTube reviews of those nuggets, and one guy was talking about whispering sweet nothings and letting that nugget come into his life. So, um, yeah, yep. From this point, it's basically just a rant. I can't think of, well, it's been a rant the whole time. I can't think of anything else to add, but I think it's a good move. That's why I like them.